Welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show. Oh boy, I'm so excited to introduce you our next guest. I have in studio with me Chris Peterson, the owner of Mount Ogden's Via Ferrata. Welcome to the show, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm so pleased to have you here. We were just talking with Joe right before we came on. Joe did pretty well out there, right? He was really afraid to do this.
Joe had some hesitation at first, but he did magnificently. You know, Via Ferrata can be scary for some people, but really, if you can climb a ladder, you can do the Via Ferrata. And we help you get around the head issues of being 35 stories in the air.
And that's exactly right. Well, first off, let's discuss some of the history behind the whole reasoning behind, what is Via Ferrata? What does it mean and where did it come from?
Well, Via Ferrata literally means road of iron, and it was invented in World War I in what is now northern Italy. The Italians and the Austrians have fought over the province of South Tyrol in every major war for the last 300 years. And in World War I, the Italians discovered, and the Austrians soon copied, they discovered that if they would anchor a steel cable, an iron cable, about waist high above a 2 or 3 inch ledge leading up the mountain, that they could load up a soldier with 200 pounds of equipment, but give him a clip to connect his belt to the cable, and that soldier, even if they'd never been in the mountains, like Joe, no, even if they've never been climbing something really seriously steep, that they could climb right up it carrying a big load. And of course, the armies were trying to jockey, always trying to get higher than their opponents as they were fighting. There was a lot of vicious fighting in the Dolomites in World War I. Anyway, after the war, when the area was impoverished and they were looking for ways to generate income, they discovered that tourists absolutely loved climbing up these Via Ferrata, these iron roads. Now there are over 500 Via Ferrata routes in the Alps. So they're virtually every place. It's extremely popular. The most popular ones are the ones near waterfalls or with dramatic views. Unfortunately, the United States, the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management doesn't allow them on public property. So there are only 3 of these in the United States. There's one in West Virginia, one in Kentucky, and this one here in northern Utah. Wow. It's just outside the Ogden city limits, about a 50-minute drive from Park City.
Well, Chris, I think you found the perfect place to stick one of these Via Ferrata adventures right here in the state of Utah in Ogden. Describe for me how you were able to decide what route to stick these rebarb stairs, I guess you could say, into the side of the mountain. How did you choose that route? Or several, actually.
Well, we've got 3 routes up there, and Ogden is the home of one of the most famous climbers in the world, Jeff Lowe. Jeff has been named one of the 100 most influential climbers of all time. And Jeff tragically contracted a variation of multiple sclerosis. And after I fell in love with Via Ferrata while shopping for chairlifts over in Wolfurt, Austria and Bolzano, Italy, I spoke to Jeff. I said, I own this property on the west side of Mount Ogden. It's got this 350-foot fantastic waterfall on it, and it's got some great climbing, but it's super tough climbing. Could we put a Via Ferrata there? And Jeff was a little skeptical at first because he's one of the best climbers in the world, but he said, yeah, I've used Via Ferrata just as a quick approach to some of the big climbs that I've done, and they're climbs like the north face of the Eiger. He's the only human being ever to do it. But his sensitivity to people of lesser abilities.
That's such a nice way to put that. Those of us who just aren't as talented.
Well, nobody is Jeff Lowe.
That is true.
Nobody can climb like he could climb. But with his increasing debilitation from this disease, he had a real heightened sensitivity to that. I said, this really does open up the vertical world to a lot more people. And so Jeff, his mobility is even reduced now, but in those days, he had to get up at 3 in the morning to hike up the back way to get to the top of where these routes are, and then he would rappel down and mark where specifically we ought to put the rungs. And he did a masterful job. The routes play peekaboo with you. You're coming up a route, and you come around a corner, and there's this massive waterfall right in front of you. And then you come into a boxy room that's just a tapestry of multicolored lichen. And then you pop around another corner, and you're looking out over the blue Great Salt Lake. And then you come around another corner, and there's an overhang, and you're looking down, and there's the green Mount Ogden golf course. So it's really, he did a very artistic job of laying this out and giving you a real feel for the mountain.
I have to add my word to that too, in terms of, kind of having like this peekaboo effect or a surprise around a corner. There's also situations where you're like, oh my goodness, where do I hook onto next? And that's fun because it's like this critical thinking, like, oh, I see it over there. It's just around this little corner, but you're always hooked into something, so you're okay. But that was one of the moments. I went on Route 1, and there was a moment there where I was like, holy smokes, how do I do this? And like being able to do it was really fulfilling. I loved the experience.
It is. It's like a physical chessboard up there. You're trying to think 2 or 3 moves ahead and figure out how to solve this puzzle. It's also been interesting from a family and a team building dynamic up there, because we have this training wall, and that's 30 feet high before we get to the 350 or 400 foot big walls. And there's always a lot of smack talk between the parents and the kids, or the bosses and the subordinates when they're on a team building.
Bets being placed, I'm sure.
Right, and all kinds of joshing and fooling around. Then when we get up on the big walls, it turns into the most supportive environment you'd ever see. It's kind of like, come on, Chelsea, you can do it. Try it, and then you'll get a little bit stuck, and they say, oh, Chelsea, there's one hidden around. If you'll reach with your foot, you can get. So anyway, you can. It's a real camaraderie building situation as well. Normally, when you're climbing, you are separated. You're on opposite ends of a 50-meter rope, and at most you're just shouting, "Are you on belay? I'm on belay. Climbing." But with Via Ferrata, you're climbing close together. I've also discovered that people who are experienced climbers have never had a way to introduce other people, non-climbers, to the sport, because your skill levels are so different. But with Via Ferrata, people can climb together really easily. Sometimes skilled climbers will skip using the iron rungs. They won't use any of the iron rungs. They'll just hold on to the natural rock handholds. Of course, they'll always stay double clipped into the steel safety cable. But then they're climbing right beside their best friend and talking them through it, even though they're using all the iron rungs. So you can have someone who's a super skilled enjoying climbing with someone who's never done it before.
It's such a fantastic experience. I like how you bring up the fact that there is a lot of camaraderie building, and I have to say this one thing. So Joe was right below me as we were climbing up, and mine were more the shouts of, oh my gosh, this is so tough, Joe. And then I would hear him let out a yell and be like, what? Are you serious? It was really funny. So there's some teasing going back and forth. But ultimately, when you get to the top, you're like, wow, I did this. We all did this. We were able to get to the top, and the views are spectacular. I have never seen Ogden Valley or Davis and Weber County or whatever I'm looking at, because there's so much of it. I've never seen that. I've seen the Wasatch area down, or rather Salt Lake Valley, but never up there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You know how Heavenly Valley Ski Resort in Lake Tahoe never has an ad that fails to show Lake Tahoe, this big blue background out there, and that's the view we get when we're up on the top of the Via Ferrata. You look down and say, wow, there's this big ocean of blue out there. You haven't done it, but you'll have to come back and do one of our sunset climbs sometimes, because it has this, I call it the Tahiti effect. The sun will be setting, the sky will turn orange, and the Great Salt Lake reflects the orange off the sky, and then Antelope Island and Fremont Island and the mountains in the distance turn black. So it's a flaming orange and black panorama.
You've sold me. Wow, that sounds spectacular. That's
well,
so
it's a lot of fun. The great thing about Via Ferrata is you go places that only elite climbers can go, and you feel the adrenaline rush that elite climbers feel, except with Via Ferrata, just about anybody can do it and do it safely.
Fantastic. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming here and sharing your insights and how you put Via Ferrata together. And like you mentioned, there are 3 different routes, correct?
Three different routes. You're guided all the time.
Based on your ability level.
That's right. Your guide will take a look at you on the training wall and then decide which of the routes is best for you. You can book online. It's OgdenAdventureCenter.com.
All right.
We encourage folks to do it. It's only about a 50-minute drive over from Park City.
And remind those, I mean, this was one of my bigger questions when I went on. I was like, how long is the hike? And what's kind of like your total hike?
It's about a 4 to 5 hour experience. It's a half-day experience.
But mile-wise, going from the parking lot
you
up to the base?
It's like vertical hiking. If you can make a 2-mile hike and you enjoy hiking, you're probably going to enjoy Via Ferrata, which is like vertical hiking. But be prepared for about a 2-mile hike.
All right, very good. Obviously, good shoes. Bring your sunscreen.
Right.
Bring a little pack with treats and all those things. But you can get in touch with Chris to make your reservation. You guys have to try it out. It is so much fun. What a fun experience. So thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Certainly appreciate your time this morning. And I've got to try one of those sunrise or sunset. You said sunset hike?
Yeah, one of the sunset climbs.
Sunset hikes. So we're going to do one of those. That sounds amazing. All right, well, we'll be right back after this quick break. Something else happening in Ogden. We have Brandy Bosworth joining us from the Ogden Nature Center.